Just because you have high income does not necessarily mean you'll get accepted for every single rental that you apply for. With more and more people renting nowadays, landlords are rejecting people with even higher income. So I wanted to make a video and explain 3 reasons why you may get rejected from a rental even with a higher income. Number one is the credit report. Landlords really care about the credit report and they want to look at it and analyze it. The reason why is because credit report determines how much you're spending on your monthly expenses. So on top of your rent, and if you pay utilities, if it's not included in the rent, you're going to have to pay also like your car payment or if you have any other loans. So that's what a credit report shows. And they want to see how much debt you have compared to your income and if you're able to service it. I've seen people with a really high income and they have a lot of debt and it's really hard to service. I know things are not as affordable as they once were, but also from a landlord's perspective, they'll take more risk renting to somebody with a high income and they have lots of higher debt. They would rather maybe go for a lower profile to mitigate that risk. So that is a reason why you could get rejected if you have higher income. It could be because the credit report is showing a lot of debt and the person with high income may not be able to service it. They may be spending 60%, 70% of their income on just expenses, which doesn't leave a lot of room for emergencies. The second reason why a landlord may reject your profile, even with higher income, is because maybe you're working cash and you're not able to show it, or there's inconsistencies in what you're saying, how much you make. So, example, someone that's self employed, they may make $100,000 a year, but for the first 6 months, they make nothing. Technically, on paper, at the end of the year, you made 100K. But if it took you 6 months to eventually start making some money that led to 100,000, then that is like inconsistent. And that's a very extreme example. But people that are self-employed, generally, their income is going up and down every month. Some months are good, some months are bad. So ideally, you would want to have more of a consistent income, or if in that scenario the person should show more savings to show that they can ride out those harder times and those slower months, because those are inevitable in any type of sales job. Another thing going on to that is cash. A lot of people make cash and they just don't show it. And I understand, you want to reduce your taxes, but when you're applying for a rental, you have to show the landlord as much as possible, and not showing stuff like cash or these inconsistencies can definitely lead to being rejected even with a higher income. Okay, and the third reason is it just doesn't make sense. What do I mean by that? It just doesn't make sense for the landlord to rent to you with a higher income. So maybe you applied for the rental and you did $400 under asking. That's a rejection. They're going to rent to somebody else that's going to do full asking, especially with it being so competitive. Another thing could be the amount of people moving in. Maybe there's a lot of people. Like example, I've worked with bachelors and it could be 6 guys that are looking at a 4 or 5 bedroom. That's too many people in a landlord's eyes to be living in the space, and they may reject it even with the higher income. Another thing could be the move-in date. Maybe the move-in date doesn't make sense, and they'd rather look to somebody else that can have a better move-in date, so they're not losing months or they're not losing vacancy. The thing that I learned about rentals is everything has to be basically perfect. And if there's any type of inconsistency in the story that you're selling, because realistically, you're selling a story. It's not like when you go buy a house, you put in an offer and they really don't care who you are, the buyer or seller. There's not really that interaction. But when you're doing a tenant and landlord agreement, there's an interaction and there's a story that you have to sell, especially when you're on the tenant side, which I deal with mostly. I have to sell a story. So if there's any inconsistencies in the story and there's holes that the landlords will see, then they're going to get scared. They're going to get scared. There's so many options nowadays, and there's so many people that are looking for a place. So there's more competition on the tenant side. And with everything that's been going on with the landlord and tenant board, landlords are very scared to rent out their properties. So everything has to be perfect. So just because you have a higher income does not necessarily mean that you'll get accepted for every single place you apply. Because I work with people with high income, I work with people with low income. And sometimes with the high income, it's harder to show the stories and harder to tell the stories. But with lower income people, sometimes they're actually easier to get accepted, just based off of some of the examples, right? Like some lower incomes, they may have no debt. Yeah, they don't make the 3 times of the monthly rent that the landlord will be looking for. But if you look at the credit report, yes, it's low, but they have no debt. So that's just one variable out of so many that determines why a person may or may not get rejected. So yeah, I just want to make a video explaining that because Um, that's a very, very common myth, I feel like, in rentals, that just because I make a certain amount of money, I should get accepted for every single place. Not necessarily. There's a lot of variables that will go into that. Okay, that's my rant for today. If you have any questions or feedback, you can leave it in the comments below, and I'll catch you on the next one. That's not bad.